going to start with Susan. I was going to connect those two stories, but I'm not going to do it. And this is her talking at the World Economic Forum about misinformation. So anyway, you're probably not watching this on YouTube. If we do share a tiny little clip on YouTube, you should know that this is a weekly show Bill and I do for supporters only on ROKFIN, Patreon, and Locals. So go to one of those. If you go to Locals, AllisonMorrow.locals.com, you can be part of my editorial board. We meet once a week, and you can give story ideas for shows like Tittle Tattle, but also for the week ahead. Give me feedback from the week before. But again, if you're watching a clip of this potentially on YouTube, which we're not even sure we're going to put there, you're only seeing a tiny, tiny portion of it. But since we are talking about YouTube, perhaps we should. So let's just see what Susan had to say about misinformation to the World Economic Forum recently.
Okay. Well, we'll see how that continues. Yeah. I can't not ask you about misinformation. It is a problem that plagues every social media platform, but it definitely plagues YouTube. And I know you've done a lot to put policies in place, tweak algorithms, to recommend the right things. But I have to wonder, in January, a global coalition of fact-checking organizations found YouTube to be a major conduit of fake news, despite all that you've put in place. So is this just a flaw in social media platforms that cannot be rectified? I mean, can we ever actually solve this, or is it just a problem that cannot be solved in the current way of platforms being operated?
We're definitely investing a huge amount to make sure that we're fighting misinformation. And there are a number of different ways that we look at this. So the first would be, from a policy standpoint, we would look at content that we would think about in terms of being violative of our policies. So if you look at COVID, for example, we came up with 10 different policies that we said would be violative. Like an example of that would be saying that COVID came from something other than a virus. And we did see people.
Oh God, I really hope YouTube, if you're watching this and it goes on YouTube, your CEO just said that. All right. So don't you dare suspend me for her saying that. Here we go.
5G equipment, for example, because they thought that it was causing COVID. And so that would just be an example of a policy that we'd remove. So we do remove content based on those policies. We actually publish that in a transparency report. The second one would be really raising up authoritative information. So if you are dealing with a sensitive subject like news, health, science, we are gonna...
Everything. Okay. Did you hear what just came out of her mouth? Well, if you're dealing with this sensitive subject like news, science, health, basically everything. I mean, what is news? News is everything. I got to say, at least I'm getting a little bit of clarity about what's going on with my YouTube channel, because we talked months ago about how they were going to start promoting, quote, authoritative sources, whatever that means. And so if you're doing news on YouTube and you think you're going to make it, think again, unless you become one of these authoritative sources. Who are they? They're obviously going to be aligned with the World Economic Forum. Well, that's where she's talking about it.
Number one, who are they? Number two, who chooses what they are? And number three, who chooses the sensitive topics? And number four, who chooses what's misinformation? This is all very, very murky.
They never discuss, they never discuss any of that when discussing this topic, because they would never want to admit that they've spread it themselves. That would be the problem with actually having to start defining these terms instead of just saying things like fake news and misinformation or whatever else, these umbrella terms, because if they really started defining it, then you would have to hold them accountable as well for the amount of misinformation or corrections that they've had to make over the years, or people who have just gotten away with it. You know, like I shared a video that I got suspended for, and then eventually I was let back in, but it was from CNN and NBC clips. And all I was doing was showing that they were allowed to break the rules. And this is the problem with authoritative sources. It's like, well, all that means is that we let you say what you want, not necessarily say the truth. How many times has the mainstream news been wrong and just change their minds? But they get to fly under the radar because why? And so all I did was share their sound bites, and I got suspended for their sound bites. That's why I'm saying I have Susan saying this stuff. So if YouTube's watching this later, if we post a clip of it, that'll be interesting because I think the computer, I don't even know if it's a real person at first. I doubt it is. I think it's just a computer at first. And I don't even know, unless you go kick up a storm on Twitter, if you ever get to a real person making decisions about it. But they just hear something. And then I think if you're in the category of the safe zone, that computer just lets you go, or it's not even tracking you at all. Whereas I'm under, I think, a pretty significant microscope. That's just my guess. But then also, you're not going to be recommended anymore. I think that's the other thing that I think people should take away here, is that your feed is going to be filled with sources that they have considered ones that you should see, and the ones that they parse out from that, you're just not going to see anymore. So you're going to have to work a lot harder to find them. They may be there, but you're going to have to do your own work to find those. Here we go.
Make sure that what we're recommending is coming from a trusted, well-known publisher that can be reliable.
Mainstream news, that's all that is. It doesn't mean that they're reliable or trusted. It just means that they're mainstream and all saying the same thing, so it's safe.
Think about how Google works. It's very similar.
Bill.
Like if you
even though the mainstream media, they are a lot of times slanted one way or the other, or they lie. They flat out lie.
Yeah.
But they get away with it.
Yeah. They get stuff wrong all the time. That, I think, at the end of the day, when I consider this topic, is nothing to do with the fact that I think there's no fake news or misinformation or whatever. People aren't getting things wrong on the internet. It's just that they're getting it wrong too. The people who get to stay in the safe zone and get to be considered an authoritative source, they get it wrong too. And so it can't really be about misinformation. I mean, I think these people somehow they're brainwashed to believe that that's really what they're doing. I don't know. Maybe Susan knows better, but it's simply not because of that. That's not the reason, because if that were the standardized approach, then nobody would be out there creating content, because there's, people get things wrong all the time. So it's not about getting things wrong, or it's about getting, in my opinion, about saying something divergent from their public service announcement, whatever they see as the thing that you must be hearing right now for your own safety and for your own good. And maybe in YouTube or the other platforms cases, in order to keep the government off their back. I think there's been a lot of pressure from the government for these platforms to regulate, and maybe they don't even want to. I don't know. Maybe they like it. I'm not sure.
You type in cancer, you type in COVID, what you're going to get are going to be names that you recognize. They're not going to be someone that just published a web page yesterday. So it's very similar.
Okay, so again, Susan's basically telling you cannot make it as an independent creator at this point if you're going to go into it. She just said it's not someone who's just created a website yesterday. So new people getting onto these platforms and getting in front of you so that you can hear new ideas. I'm sorry, Susan just crushed that dream.
We handle that on YouTube. The third is making sure that if there's content that's borderline content that technically meets our policy but is lower quality, that's content that we basically will not recommend to our users. Our users could still access it.
I think that's what I am, Bill. I think I have borderline YouTube disorder. Yeah. I think they've made me borderline.
But they will not recommend it. And then lastly, we're just really careful about what we monetize. So we always want to make sure that there's no incentive. So for example, with regard to climate change, we don't monetize any kind of climate change material. So there's no incentive for you to keep publishing that material that is propagating something that is generally understood as not.
So climate change is the next thing. Well, don't forget, everybody, that Father's Day is coming up this weekend, right, Bill?
Yes.
So get your dad something to deal with the fact that he raised you and all the problems that he now has left over from your childhood at AllisonWinePromo.com.
Or get some wine from AllisonWinePromo.com to drown your sorrows from the PTSD that your dad gave you.
That's what I'm saying. Actually, I was just about to say that. Somebody commented, when you talk about Mother's Day, because I was pitching it for Mother's Day, somebody commented that I hate my mom. Why would I want to get my mom wine?
Then get yourself the wine.
So it's like you're totally right. Then fine, get yourself some wine and drink your sorrows away. I don't really promote drinking your sorrows away. But you know what? If you want to have a glass of wine to just say, hey, screw it. Or well, I'm not going to, I will go into my next video. I don't want to reveal anything about my video with Christian Watson. But anyway, let's just say, go to AllisonWinePromo.com to either forget about your dad or to celebrate your dad. Whatever you want to do, just go to Allison Wine Promo, 50% off the wine itself, 50% off shipping. And remember, as Bill noticed last time, we have the Rogue Malbec. Nothing says free speech better than the Rogue Malbec. Also, you can go to twinenginecoffee.com/Allison and get yourself some high altitude Nicaraguan roast, USDA certified organic. There is the limited black edition. I actually just had cigar number 1 this morning, which is a dark roast I really like. And then there's tea. If you're a tea drinker, you can get Caturra tea. Maybe your dad likes tea. It's a lot harder to get drunk off tea if you're trying to forget about your dad. So if you are in that category and not wanting to buy your dad something for Father's Day, then you should definitely go back to Allison Wine Promo.
Or you can get the wine or a bag of coffee and you can hit your dad upside the head with it if you really hate him that much. It works either way, folks. Just go to either one of these, pick up some of these fine products, and keep Allison in the lifestyle she's come accustomed to, with having lights and food.
Lights and food. Yeah. I was waiting to hear, what is the lifestyle I've come accustomed to? Oh, okay. Right. Power.